The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Welcome to Squawk Box Europe. I'm Karen Cho with Steve Sedgwick and Juliana Tattelbaum. These are your headlines. Israel targets Hamas leaders with airstrikes in Qatar, sending shockwaves through the Gulf and undermining hopes of a ceasefire as US President Trump condemns the attack.
I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect, and we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went down.
France's Emmanuel Macron swiftly names his next new prime minister. Next up is the loyalist Sebastien Lecornu, who now faces a fairly uphill task of uniting a fractured parliament and trying to pass the government's reform agenda and, of course, its fiscal package.
A U.S. judge temporarily blocks President Trump from firing Fed Governor Lisa Cook, ruling that claims of mortgage fraud before taking office are not sufficient grounds for removal. And Novo Nordisk slashes 9,000 jobs as part of cost-cutting measures as the Danish drug maker battles weaker sales and tough competition in the U.S.
Good morning, everyone. I know we all want to talk about the data today, big revisions, what it means for the Fed, but let's get into the latest around the geopolitics. Qatar has condemned what it called a cowardly attack after Israel carried out strikes in the country's capital, Doha, which the IDF said targeted senior Hamas leadership. Several people were killed, but a Hamas official told Al Jazeera that senior leadership survived the attack. The attack drew global condemnation, including US criticism of Israel.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this: we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
You were caught by surprise.
I'm never surprised by anything, especially when it comes to the Middle East.
How did you learn about this?
I'll be giving a full statement tomorrow, but I would tell you this. I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect, and we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went down.
The White House said it had notified Qatar of an impending attack, a claim the country's prime minister disputed.
Of course, there were some statements that came out a moment ago that said that there were warnings that came to us from the Americans. On the matter that there was a caution from the Americans sent a message 10 minutes after the attacks took place, saying they were informed that there was going to be a missile attack on the state of Qatar.
The Israelis may have conducted the airstrike, but I think the Americans are shot across the bow, and Trump saying in a phone call to Qatar that an attack, this such thing, won't happen again on their soil. So sending a very clear message that he doesn't think it is the right thing to do. And of course, an attack on another sovereign nation within their grounds. Very, very difficult here, the optics here for Washington, I think, when it comes to foreign policy.
I think the key here is that Qatar is a key U.S. regional ally. It hosts the largest U.S. military base in the region, and the commentary that have come out from leaders across the world has been fairly universal. You know, you've got the UN Secretary General condemning the flagrant violation of the sovereignty, territorial integrity of Qatar. Macron coming out describing the attacks as unacceptable. Keir Starmer also condemning the attacks. But does this actually change anything? We've heard a lot of rhetoric from leaders, but does this actually change the dynamics in the region?
You're right. I think people are saying what they think they have to say to distance themselves from the Israelis. But look, this isn't so surprising. Israel has said it will hunt down everybody who it holds responsible for the devastating events which started this even more devastating war on both sides, where the loss of life has been appalling as well. But Israel has always stated, and has always done so historically, if you kill our people, we will go after the people we believe are the perpetrators. And this is just another incarnation. I can't help thinking there's a lot of lip service from a lot of people who are criticising at the moment. No one wants an escalation, whether it be the UAE, whether it be Saudi, whether it be the US, whether it be Turkey, which is an interesting intervention as well. I think a lot of people are saying then they're hoping this is just going to go away. Quick look at the oil price as well, which I will add in as well. It is up, but not that much. It's just following the trend that we saw before the attack in Qatar as well. So I would suggest that people believe from a geopolitical and from an economic point of view, it has very limited impact.
Can I pick up on the economic side? Because there was a point that was made in some of the reporting that it was Trump who stayed just down the road from where the attack happened back in May, about 2 kilometres away. And this is the whole point. Trump has been in the region trying to build economic ties. You've got a region that is trying to pivot towards an AI technology future. This type of instability on its soil does seem to detract from that stability story that I think the region is trying to convey.
One last thing just to add, Karen, you mentioned, we were just chatting about this before the show began, that you're flying through Doha later in the year, and I think many travelers go through this region. I think from an implications perspective, having an attack like this may bring into question whether people want to continue flying through the region when this kind of possibility is out there.
I think it's just a very targeted attack on a very targeted bunch of people. They didn't actually kill one of the people they were trying to kill, but I would probably disagree, having kind of grown up in London in the 70s and 80s when there were terrorist attacks on a regular basis. I don't think it necessarily would have stopped people going to the region.
Does it actually change your travel plans? Maybe not at this stage, but I guess it depends if this is the beginning of a further escalation. If we see other attacks, doesn't seem like that's going to be the case.
French President Emmanuel Macron has named, here's the latest person to go up the ramp. Is he going up the ramp to the guillotine? That's the question. No, I'm sorry, that's too early. Has named Sebastien Lecornu as the country's new Prime Minister. Lecornu, who previously served as a defence minister, is largely seen as a continuity choice. France is also bracing for a wave of demonstrations this week after the block everything movement, how French, picked up on social media over the last few weeks. Yes, that'll really get you out of the mess, won't it? Block everything. Anyway, calling for blockades, strikes and other disruption. Charlotte, this is clearly the only man who's been in every government of Macron so far as well. He is close to Macron, but that is not necessarily a selling point because, as we all know, Macron is becoming a devalued commodity in French political circles. People tell me, and I'm sure they tell you the same as well, that he is becoming the problem, not his prime minister. So having someone who's close to him, that's not going to help.
No, and that's what we hear from all the opposition parties as soon as we had that name. That came very fast, by the way. On the same day that Bayrou presented his resignation, we had a new prime minister. To be fair, we knew for a couple of weeks that Bayrou was probably going to fall. So, but still, very fast for President Macron to name the new prime minister, Sebastien Lecornu. As you say, one that's been in every government of President Macron since 2017. He joined him from the centre-right as well. 39-year-old. Interestingly, he's not someone who's very well known of the wider public. He's been defence minister since May 2022, so very much leading the French effort on the defense side from the very beginning of the war in Ukraine. But he doesn't do a lot of TV, he doesn't speak in public very much. He's a very discreet kind of character. But certainly everybody in the opposition say that this is just more of the same. Someone who's very, very close ally to President Macron. Marine Le Pen reacting on X, saying the president is firing the last cartridge of Macronism, bunkered down with his little square of loyalists. And that's kind of what we hear from a lot of people in the opposition, very much a skepticism of what can this man that's kind of in the mold from his predecessors coming from the same party reach any sort of compromise with the other parties, particularly with the socialists, because we know that the socialists, a small group in the National Assembly, will be very much instrumental in toppling the Bayrou government. And can Sebastien Lecornu succeed in negotiating with them where his predecessors have failed? Interestingly, the communiqué from the Élysée was quite different from previous communiqués. Normally, there's just the name of the prime minister. In this one, it says that the president has tasked Lecornu with consulting the political forces represented in parliament with a view to adopting a budget. And following the discussions, it will be up to the prime minister to propose a government. So negotiations first with the different parties, then a government. So you think that in these negotiations, maybe some ministries will be offered to different parties to potentially bring them on board to eventually vote a budget. But here again, a lot of skepticism out there of what can Lecornu achieve in terms of negotiation with opposition parties to get a budget through.
I know this is being portrayed as the last man standing in terms of the new prime ministerial appointment, but is there something in it where this particular character has some sort of relationship or bridges that he's built with the far right in the past? I mean, there's been some reporting saying at times he's had the ear of Le Pen herself, that he had a secret dinner with Bardella recently last year. And effectively, you look at what was in the communication, there was a sort of almost a fairly nice tone from the far right saying we will judge without illusion the new Prime Minister on his merits and on his actions, his policies for providing France with a budget. And on this light of our red lines, that was from Bardella. So not the worst engagement that you could have had from the far right.
Potentially, but here again, everything we heard from then since the nomination hasn't been very positive. So it looks like they are set on trying to trigger a dissolution of parliament. They say no prime minister will be good enough right now. We just want a new parliamentary election. So that's up to the president to do that. He has no obligation, of course, to do so. But again, it's really interesting to see this parallel of this new prime minister, this handover ceremony that will be at midday today in Paris, when in the background you have this protest happening, some social discontent happening out there. Authorities are worried about it because it's not an official movement, there's no official protest, unions are not officially involved in it. It started on social media. And so they're worried of, they're blocking some ports, some stations, some roads, small pockets of action that have the potential to turn violent. And so authorities are watching this closely.
In terms of those strikes, I mean, many are saying that this is going to be trial by fire for the prime minister. He's taking office just as the country braces for this major disruption. What can we expect in terms of the scale of these protests? And just flesh out for us what specifically people are protesting at this point. You say it's not official in terms of the union. So what is the pushback here?
Yeah, so it started on social media with let's block everything. And it's unclear where it started from. The movement gathered a bit of pace when the far left leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, said he was supporting it. But here again, there's no official spokesperson from that movement. This is why the authorities are struggling to try to negotiate or have unions. There's no official protest route that normally is approved by the police. None of it is official. So that's why they say they're worried about controlling it and keeping an eye on this. And there's been a lot of police being put in the streets of Paris under control. Some say that's hiking the tension, so to some extent having so much police on the street. But they're watching. We've seen already some pockets and some blockages this morning in different cities in France. And again, the parallel between this and the inauguration of the new prime minister, as you say, is a big trial straight away.
Just quick, how stupid are these people that want to block everything? Because actually they should be celebrating today. They should be saying, great, we haven't had any of the cuts. We've blocked another reformist agenda. We have blocked any fiscal responsibility again. So we're going to have things as they are. Nothing's changing. It's all going to be exactly the same, as the French might say as well. So they should be happy today rather than unhappy because they've thwarted another attempt to get France in the 21st century.
Well, it's difficult to answer this, but certainly some observers say that naming a new ally of Macron to power is another provocation, and there are pockets of discontent. There is a fatigue by the wider public. Very few people will participate in these actions today. There is a fatigue in the wider public of these actions again and again. A new prime minister, more of the same, and so there is a certain social discontent. That is not violent, far from it. But there are some unhappiness in French society, certainly.
Charlotte, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. Coming up on the show, Cristiano Amon tells CNBC advanced driving systems will play an increasingly large part of the company's strategy ahead. We'll bring you Arjun's interview with the Qualcomm CEO. Plus, Klarna prices its shares above the targeted range ahead of its much-anticipated IPO today. And the biggest political and business names in the energy sector are gathering in Milan for Gas Tech. Dan will be joined by Mike Sabel, CEO of LNG provider Venture Global. That's coming up next. Welcome back to the program. A hat trick of challenges for the energy market looms over this year's Gas Tech in Milan, with sanctions on Russia, U.S. tariffs, and increasing OPEC Plus supply dominating conversations. Dan joins us from the conference with more. Dan, good morning.
Juliana, good morning to you. Well, really pleased to be bringing in our next guest here. Mike Kerbel is the CEO of Venture Global, joining me around the desk here, or lack thereof here in Milan. So welcome to the program. Great to have you here at Gastech. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you, Dan.
First of all, just tell me, why was it important for you to be here? This is the largest gathering of executives of this kind in the sector, probably the largest conference of its kind in gas. What's the value add for you?
Well, it's, I've been in this quite a while now. This is probably the busiest we've been negotiating contracts in at least 10 years. The market is extremely active right now, really following on the back of tariff negotiations in Europe and Asia between the United States and in the various countries. And LNG, which is our business, is one of the top one or two items that really end up contributing in those discussions.
So, Mike, what you're saying is this U.S. policy action is actually driving the markets right now. Is that fair to say?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, there's fundamental demand because the U.S. and other markets produce really inexpensive gas for export. But the contracts are large, and so it's a great way to begin those trade negotiations.
You've also just signed a major new deal with Eni, so I want you to walk me through it. What does it ultimately say about demand for US LNG into Europe today?
Yeah, we're really excited about that deal. Eni's a great, innovative Italian company, the largest energy company in Italy and one of the largest in Europe. This is the first deal that Eni's done in the United States for LNG, so we're really proud of it. I think it's a $15 billion deal approximately. The demand is very strong in Europe for US LNG. There's really a shortage of electricity production capacity right now in Europe, and gas is going to be a major part of it.
More deals on the way?
A lot more deals on the way.
So walk me through what you're seeing in the European market now specifically. So much of the conversation on the ground here has been about Europe's energy needs, particularly as we see the Trump administration pushing forward with the energy dominance agenda. You and I actually just saw the energy secretary walking past a few moments ago. I think it's interesting because there's clear pressure on the Europeans now to pivot away from Russian supply. What role can your business do in helping to achieve that?
Well, we are, I think, one of the fastest growing energy companies in the world as our teams construct our facilities in Louisiana. The U.S. is about 1/3 approximately of global LNG supply and growing, and the U.S. plays an important role in really helping to manage global price. The U.S. is an innovative builder of liquefaction capacity, and that really polices what price in the commodity markets globally can be charged.
Talk to me about some of your other major investments as well. CP2 also underway in Louisiana. What is that going to unlock?
We just took formal investment decision and financing for CP2 about a month ago. $15 billion deal, largest standalone private project financing ever done. It will ultimately be a 40 million ton facility, one of the largest facilities in the world, and it's well under construction. In a little over 2 years, we'll be producing LNG.
What's the biggest risk with CP2? Is it financing, execution, regulation, perhaps? Do you see anything on the horizon that could potentially derail those efforts to expand your overall supply?
These are immense, complex transactions. It's probably one of the 5 largest construction projects in the world now. Larger than Hinkley nuclear project, to just pick one example. I think the Three Gorges Dam project was less than $40 billion. So this project, not on an inflation-adjusted basis, will be larger than the Three Gorges Dam on a cost basis. It's just there's 80 to 100,000 scopes that have to be executed sequentially. And so our teams have done it before, but they're complex.
What you have right now as well, and we were just talking about this, but what you have right now is the political tailwinds in the United States.
Yes.
What happens if that changes in the coming years?
Well, we obviously are heavily regulated, and so permitting is an important consideration in all these projects. It is a really supportive environment, and we're grateful for the Trump administration support on our facilities in the industry. We're working to make sure we have our pipelines that we need permitted in future facilities as well. But we're optimistic the U.S. is going to remain a major long-term supplier. For the U.S. to exit growing this market in the future would be immensely impactful on the global market price for energy and very unfriendly to our allies around the world and for cost of energy.
Mike, it's really clear to me in the conversations that I've been having on the ground here that there's a lot of investment taking place in this space. There's also a lot of tailwinds, not just the political, but other tailwinds as well. What's going on with the share price? Because, looking at how Venture's been trading since IPO, obviously a lot of headlines around the IPO, shares about half of the IPO price right now, down to around $13 compared to 25. Do you think investors just misunderstood the business, or are there other factors at play here?
No, I think they have. Probably what most CEOs would say. We're not happy with where the price is relative to, we think, fundamental value. But if we keep executing as we are and growing our business and keeping our team safe as we do construction, we're very confident that the stock price will follow the growth in earnings.
And turn it around?
I don't consider it a turnaround because we keep achieving the milestones that we set as goals. But I'm confident the stock price will come back.
Mike, great to see you. Thanks for joining in today.
Great.
Mike Coble there from Venture Global, and with that, we'll pass it back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating space, Dan. Loving your gas tech coverage. Thank you very much for that. The president, Mr. Trump, has been blocked from firing Fed Governor Lisa Cook, whilst a lawsuit challenging her removal continues. The US leader said on August 25th that he was firing Cook amid suggestions that she had committed mortgage fraud, which the Fed official denies. The Supreme Court is expected to have the final say. Cook's legal team hailed the decision, saying it reaffirmed the importance of safeguarding Fed independence, whilst the White House said the administration will continue to work to restore accountability and confidence in the Federal Reserve. That's a very good question, actually. Does the Federal Reserve have confidence from the market or not at the moment? And I would suggest, despite the faux pas, which I think is fair enough because it came from a lot of central bankers about transitory, which some of us challenged at the time, and that was a very big faux pas, which questioned their judging of the current situation and of the inflationary risks as well. And I think there are questions, and I know you want to talk about the revisions to the employment data as well, because you think that's making the cut seem perhaps more prevalent, more necessary?
Yeah, some fragility is certainly coming through in the jobs market yesterday, evident in those revisions, and the fact that the weakness in the labour market started much earlier than what we thought under the Biden administration, actually, which is what the data was showing us yesterday. But the numbers we've seen recently also suggesting continuation of that weakness in the labour market. So it would seem as though the landscape is now telling the Fed that there are concerns and maybe it wants to think about a rate cut. For me, what's so fascinating is that jumbo rate reduction was really off the table other than for Scott Bessent, but is coming back into the frame thanks to some of the data, of course. Whether PPI, CPI gets in the way of a large-scale rate reduction is the question. But for me, the voting members also, fascinating Cook. We've just seen a ring fence really now through some of these legal cases that if the Trump administration wants to go after some of the other voting members at the Fed, then perhaps it can't go back over history. It's going to have to find some form of misconduct in current role at the Federal Reserve. I think that's been sort of the verdict early on from these legal cases.
Interesting also in terms of that verdict to see that the judge said that the public interest in the Federal Reserve independence weighs in favor of Cook's reinstatement. So really weighing into this whole debate around the Fed's independence. And Steve, to your point about markets and whether markets are actually pricing in concern around the Fed's independence, I don't think we've had a real test yet because, to Karen's point, the data has weakened, justifying a rate cut if you're inclined to lean that way. The real test, and maybe this is why markets have been so calm about it, will be if the data is very clearly in one direction, if we do see inflation take off, or if we see the labor market data strengthen.
Can I disagree? I wonder whether it's hiding in plain sight. The gold price, for instance, the rally we've seen there, we've seen the 30-year as well. There's been a little bit of interest in pushing that yield higher. Is this all the reflection about the uncertainty, the lack of confidence in markets around the Fed? It has been priced in some quarters, but like all the other risks we've been talking about, the market still sees momentum in some of the growth areas, not willing to take the foot off the pedal there, but they are also pricing the risk in the assets that they can.
No, I don't think it's about confidence in the Fed, why gold has gone up and why the long end has been under so much pressure.
Reason to add to the equation?
It's nothing to do with it. It's because it's a lack of confidence in the fiscal position of the underlying
clearly
countries.
That's there, but is it another reason as well to add to gold positions, that if you think that there's a loss of confidence in having some sort of control over the inflation mandate because of the independence being questioned, does that mean that you start tackling the long end of the curve?
This whole conversation on another level is mildly ridiculous anyway, because in my entire life, and in the history of the Federal Reserve, and in the history of the Bank of England, and in the history of the Bundesbank as well, every single time the fiscal position gets so bad, the central bank will jump in, and it will jump in via some form of fiscal monetization or some interest rate move as well. So yes, we are talking at one level about central bank independence, but the fact is, every single example that you, all of you out there can cite is the central bank will always come in to bail out the government when it is the last man or last woman standing. It's a fact. It's always happened. So we talk about independence. Oh, we've got to pressure. And I do. I believe in the independence to a certain degree. But the truth is, when push comes to shove, the central bank will always bail out the government.
Can I flip that around? Because it's about crisis avoiding, isn't it? Avoiding these crises all the time. And if the Fed is not able to pull all of its levers to tackle the inflation mandate, price stability, then do you end up in that peak trough more often than not, because the crisis had not been avoided by a central bank that is impotent?
It's really simple, and dare I say it, there's a certain book
If I hear another
first time
book.
that, come on, do you know, I almost made, and I'm talking about Dalio's book where he says eventually they will. But the point is, I did this panel on Friday evening. I'll tell you a quick anecdote, we've got to move on.
Just for a little bit of fun, you did a Friday evening panel.
Friday afternoon panel, hour and 40 minutes. It was brilliant. There were brilliant people involved. And I think I can say, it's a matter of fact, that Larry Fink was the star guest. And I interviewed him for a good 10 minutes, and then we moved on. But because I was reading the book about another market doyen, I kind of had in my head, Dalio. No, don't tell Fink he's Dalio. Can you imagine how that would have gone down with both of those gentlemen if I introduced Larry Fink as Ray Dalio? Because I had it in my mind.
Couldn't get it out of your head.
Maybe throw Jamie Dimon in there as well. Just
that would have gone really bad. But luckily, I didn't make that faux pas. Moving on, legal challenges to President Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs will be fast-tracked by the Supreme Court. With the first cases set to be heard in the first week of November, the White House says it looks forward to the ultimate victory. Wow. Our US colleagues caught up with JP Morgan boss, the aforementioned Jamie Dimon, who gave his reading on the health of the US economy.
The economy's weakening. Whether that is on the way to recession or just weakening, I don't know, and that just confirms what we already thought. The consumer's weakened, confidence weakened, corporate profit's still up, and there's a lot of different factors in the economy right now. It's hard to figure out what it all means, and I've always been quite skeptical of most forecasts for that reason. So we just have to wait and see. There's a lot of stimulus out there too. We don't know what the Fed's going to do. They'll probably reduce rates, but I don't think that's going to be consequential to the economy.